Sigh. Oh, Thomas, we're discussing yet another bloody action film. I thought we agreed to watch something more civilized this time around.
Well, Mr. Fancy Pants. It's not like you haven't forced me to sit through your endless historical dramas and boring period pieces, has it? Besides, Timothy, there's something about a good old-fashioned post-apocalyptic action flick that gets the blood pumping. Don't you agree?
I suppose.
If we must. So, this Furiosa business...
Some spin-off from that Mad Max nonsense. I've never been much of a fan of those films. They all blend together for me.
Well, you're in for a treat, my old chap. Furiosa is not just any old spin-off, no siree. It's an origin story, a prequel even, to one of the most beloved characters from Mad Max. Fury Road, you know. The film that finally got them their long overdue Academy Awards.
Well, I suppose it's about time they got some recognition. But tell me, Tom, what is this film actually about?
The green place of many mothers is one of the last bastions of freshwater and agriculture. But, as fate would have it, two children, Furiosa and Valkyrie, are out picking peaches when some raiders discover their idyllic paradise.
Sounds like a lot of fuss over some peaches, if you ask me. And what's this nonsense about not revealing the location of the green place? It's just a silly plot device to create unnecessary drama. Isn't it, Tom?
You'll see, my old fart. You'll see. Now, let me ask you something, Timothy. What do you think about this new Furiosa? Any thoughts on her portrayal by the lovely Anya Taylor-Joy and Alila Brown?
Well, I suppose they both did an adequate job portraying their respective Furiosas, but I must admit, I still miss the charismatic madness of Charlize Theron's performance in Fury Road. As for the story itself, it does have some interesting elements, but overall, it feels too formulaic and predictable. You've got the strong-willed heroine fighting against all odds to save her people and find redemption along the way. It's a trope we've seen countless times in post-apocalyptic action films, isn't it?
Poof. Well, Timothy, my dear old fart, you can't always expect every film to reinvent the wheel of cinema now, do you? Sometimes it's comforting to watch a tried-and-true formula executed well. Don't you agree? Besides, this particular spin-off prequel, whatever you want to call it, does have some interesting twists and turns that keep the viewers engaged throughout the runtime.
I suppose I can't deny that there were some action-packed scenes and decent performances, but overall, Furiosa just doesn't quite live up to the high bar set by its predecessor. The world building felt lackluster, and the motivations behind many characters' actions were often murky at best. I found myself more invested in the supporting cast members than the titular protagonist herself.
Oh, well, my old chap, we'll just have to agree to disagree on this one. For me, Furiosa was a welcome respite from your endless parade of stuffy period dramas and boring Oscar chasers. It had action, adventure, and even some heartwarming moments of camaraderie between the unlikely duo of Furiosa and her reluctant mentor, Captor Dementus. And who can resist a good old-fashioned post-apocalyptic car chase?
Well, Tom, I'll give you that it had some decent action sequences, and the visuals were certainly impressive. But overall, I found myself more bored than entertained. But enough of my grumbling. Let me ask you something about this film. Did you happen to catch any interesting trivia or behind-the-scenes tidbits during your research?
Always the educator, aren't you? Well, Timothy, it so happens that I did find a rather fascinating bit of trivia about Furiosa's iconic arm tattoo. Do you recall the star chart she has inked on her left arm?
Vaguely. Something about finding the green place.
Right. Well, according to director George Miller, That star chart was actually drawn by a real-life astrologer, and it actually does lead to the coordinates of the real-life location where Furiosa's final battle against Immortan Joe takes place. Pretty impressive attention to detail, wouldn't you say?
It's a clever way to incorporate an Easter egg for the die-hard fans, isn't it? But I still stand by my initial assessment, Tom. Furiosa was just too formulaic and lacking in originality to truly captivate me. The world building felt half-hearted at best, and I found myself more invested in the supporting cast members than the titular protagonist herself.
Furiosa wasn't trying to reinvent the post-apocalyptic action genre. It was simply paying homage to the classics while still carving out its own unique niche in the world of Mad Max. And as for the supporting cast, they were fantastic, weren't they? The duo of Immortan Joe and his right-hand man, Dementus, provided the film with much-needed comedic relief amidst all the bloodshed and chaos. Their banter was so well written and delivered with just the right amount of bravado and campiness that I couldn't help but cheer for them even when they were being utterly ruthless. And then there's Valkyrie, played by the stunning Tilda Swinton. Her stoic yet fierce portrayal of a warrior woman who finds purpose in protecting her sisters was truly heartwarming. And let's not forget about the love triangle that develops between Furiosa, Valkyrie, Dementus, and even Immortan Joe himself. It added a much-needed layer of complexity to what could have been just another post-apocalyptic action flick.
Well, I suppose you're right about one thing, Tom. Furiosa did have some decent performances, especially from the supporting cast members you mentioned. But overall, it still didn't manage to capture the same magic that Fury Road had. The world building was lackluster, and the story felt too formulaic for my taste. I'll give credit where credit is due. Some of the action sequences were well executed, but that wasn't enough to save this film in my book.
Well, Timothy,
We'll just have to agree to disagree on this one.
Furiosa was a welcome breath of fresh air amidst the sea of formulaic blockbusters that flood our cinemas every year. It had action, adventure, humor, heartwarming moments, and even a dash of subversiveness. And hey, it's a Mad Max movie. What more could you possibly want?
Well, Tom, I must admit that you've made some compelling points there. Furiosa certainly had its moments, and it was nice to see the franchise branching out into new directions with a story centered around one of its most iconic characters. However, I still can't help but feel that something was missing in terms of depth and originality. The plot felt too formulaic at times, relying heavily on established tropes from both the Mad Max series and post-apocalyptic genre as a whole.
That may be so, Timothy, but you have to remember that Furiosa wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel here. It was more of a love letter to the fans of the franchise, giving them what they wanted while also introducing some new elements to keep things fresh. And let's not forget about director George Miller's vision for this film. His attention to detail and commitment to practical effects is truly commendable in an era where CG reigns supreme.
I'll grant you that, Tom. The practical effects were indeed impressive and added a sense of authenticity to the world of Mad Max. However, it seems like they were used more as a crutch at times rather than enhancing the overall storytelling experience. There were moments where I felt like the film could have benefited from a bit more focus on character development and emotional depth instead of relying solely on action, set pieces, and spectacle.
Well, Timothy, that's where our opinions differ once again. For me, Furiosa struck the perfect balance between action, emotion, and world building. The characters were well-rounded and relatable, despite their gruff exteriors, and their relationships with each other added an extra layer of depth to the story. And as for the plot, I found it engaging enough to keep me invested throughout its runtime.
Well, Tom, we've certainly had our fair share of disagreements about Furiosa. But one thing we can both agree on is that the film has sparked some interesting conversations and debates among fans and critics alike. It's always fascinating to see how people interpret different aspects of a movie, isn't it?
Indeed it is, Timothy. Furiosa will undoubtedly go down as one of the most divisive entries in the Mad Max franchise, but that's what makes it so special. It has ignited passionate discussions about storytelling, character development, and even feminism within the post-apocalyptic genre. And who knows? Perhaps future installments will strike a chord with both of us in different ways.
Well said, Tom. I suppose it's up to each individual viewer to decide whether Furiosa was a worthy addition to the Mad Max canon or not. But one thing's for sure, this film will surely leave a lasting impression on anyone who dares to enter its unique post-apocalyptic world.
Indeed it will, Timothy. Now I'd like to shift our focus a bit and talk about the actors in Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. Anya Taylor-Joy was absolutely captivating as Furiosa herself. Her portrayal of a strong, resilient woman navigating through this harsh world was nothing short of amazing. She brought depth and vulnerability to the character while still maintaining her tough exterior.
Well, Tom, I must admit that Anya Taylor-Joy did an admirable job in the role of Furiosa. However, I felt like there were moments where her performance was a bit too subdued and understated. Don't get me wrong, she had some great scenes throughout the film, but I wanted to see more range from her as an actor. Perhaps it would have been interesting to see someone else take on this iconic role.
Well, Timothy, I think we can agree to disagree on that one. Anya Taylor-Joy brought a certain charm and vulnerability to the role that I feel not many other actors could have pulled off as effectively. Plus, it's important to remember that Furiosa is a character who goes through immense emotional turmoil throughout the film. That being said, let's talk about Alila Brown, who played young Furiosa in the prequel scene. Her performance was truly remarkable. She captured both the innocence and determination of the young protagonist with ease.
I completely agree with you there, Tom. Alila Brown did an exceptional job as young Furiosa. She had some heart-wrenching moments in the film that really tugged at my emotional strings. It was fascinating to see how her character evolved into the Furiosa we know and love from the previous Mad Max installments. Now, let's talk about the rest of the cast. What did you think of their performances?
Well, Timothy, I thought the supporting cast was equally impressive. Nicholas Hoult brought a certain charm and unpredictability to Nux, while Hugh Keys-Byrne was terrifyingly menacing as Immortan Joe. However, there's one performance that really stood out for me, Zoe Kravitz as Toast. Her character arc was truly inspiring and her chemistry with Anya Taylor-Joy was electric on screen.
I have to agree with you about Zoe Kravitz's performance as Toast. She brought a sense of warmth and humanity to what could have been just another tough female character in the film. Her scenes with both Furiosa and Nux were some of my favorites because of how genuine their interactions felt. Now, let's move on to discussing the cultural impact of Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, as one of the most anticipated films of 2024. What do you think its legacy will be?
Well, Timothy, it's difficult to predict the exact legacy Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, will leave behind just yet. However, I believe it's already made waves in terms of its representation of strong female characters, Butko themes, and post-apocalyptic storytelling in general. It's a film that challenges traditional gender roles and stereotypes, which is something we sorely need in today's cinematic landscape. Furthermore, the film's visuals are nothing short of breathtaking, thanks to director George Miller's masterful eye for detail and the incredible work done by the production design team. The world building is immersive, and every shot feels like a painting come to life. I think, this attention to detail will undoubtedly influence future post-apocalyptic films and TV shows alike. But ultimately, the impact of Furiosa. A Mad Max Saga will be determined by time and how people continue to engage with its themes and message. It's a film that demands multiple viewings, not just because it's visually stunning, but also because there's so much depth hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered. And, now, Timothy, what are your thoughts on the cultural impact of Furiosa? A Mad Max Saga? Do you think it'll stand the test of time? Or is it just another flash in the post-apocalyptic flick?
Well, Tom, I think it's safe to say we have quite differing opinions on Furiosa. A Mad Max Saga. While I commend George Miller's vision for expanding the Mad Max universe and exploring deeper themes, I found myself slightly disappointed in the execution. As much as I admire Anya Taylor-Joy's performance, I just couldn't get past the feeling that this could have been a more groundbreaking film. It had the potential to truly shake up the action genre and challenge traditional gender roles, but I think it ultimately fell short. However, I'm curious to hear what our viewers think about Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. Do you agree with me or Tom? Let us know in the comments section below. And remember, if you enjoyed this discussion and want to see more, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that little bell icon to stay updated on all our future videos. Thanks for joining us today.